Australia is home to some of the most eerie and haunted forts, each with a chilling past that continues to haunt the present. From ghostly soldiers to unsettling whispers in the wind, these forts carry the weight of their histories, where the spirits of those who once defended the land still linger. Join us as we explore 15 of the most haunted forts across Australia, each one a place where the past refuses to stay buried. 1 Fort Scratchley, Newcastle, New South Wales. Fort Scratchley sits brooding over Newcastle, its stone walls steeped in ghostly tales from the past. Built in the 1880s, this fort defended Australia through 2 world wars, but many believe it still harbors the restless spirits of those who perished here. At dusk, the atmosphere changes. A chill creeps into the air, and shadows seem to shift on their own. In the tunnels below, visitors have reported the unnerving sound of phantom footsteps echoing along empty corridors. Some claim to see spectral soldiers standing guard in full uniform, their faces pale and expressionless, fading into the darkness as quickly as they appear. Cold drafts pass unexpectedly, and whispers drift through the fort's stone walls, as if unseen figures are still planning their battle. Tour guides tell of sudden, inexplicable drops in temperature and flashes of light that disappear upon approach. Even the bravest visitors often find themselves looking over their shoulder, sensing they're not alone in Fort Scratchley's haunted embrace. 2nd, Fort Largs, Taparoo, South Australia. Fort Largs stands alone on the desolate coastline, its silent guns pointing out to sea, as if guarding against unseen enemies. Built in the late 19th century and used during both world wars, the fort's eerie corridors and echoing chambers are now home to more than just history. As dusk settles, strange sounds begin, a faint, rhythmic drumming, like footsteps from soldiers long gone. Visitors often report a chilling presence feeling watched as they walk through the empty rooms. Shadows shift just out of sight, and whispers seem to rise from the very walls. The air is heavy, charged with the energy of something unseen, waiting. In one of the fort's darkest corners, it's said the apparition of a lone soldier lingers, his gaze empty, his figure fading into the walls if approached. Many leave Fort Largs with an inexplicable sense of dread, a reminder that some spirits may still be standing guard, unwilling to abandon their post. 3rd, Fort Nepan, Portsea, Victoria. Fort Nepan looms at the edge of Port Phillip Bay, a place where secrets echo through long-abandoned tunnels and watchtowers. Constructed in the 19th century to guard Melbourne from threats, this fort has seen more than its share of darkness. As night falls, whispers rise from the depths of its passageways, where visitors often claim to hear faint voices and footsteps following close behind. Shadows glide along the walls, shifting in the dim light, and an icy chill fills the air. Some have seen ghostly figures in old military attire standing silently near the gun emplacements, their gazes fixed on the horizon, as though scanning for enemies that only they can see. The oppressive silence of Fort Nepan is often broken by sudden gusts of cold wind, brushing past as if invisible figures are rushing through. For those who linger too long, the feeling of being watched becomes unbearable, urging them back to safety as if the spirits of Fort Nepan are warning them away from secrets that must remain buried. 4th, Fort Glenville, Semaphore, South Australia. In the coastal town of Semaphore, Fort Glenville stands as a formidable relic, its stone walls haunted by the shadows of a bygone era. Built in 1880, the fort once guarded against feared invasions, but today it feels as if something darker guards its abandoned corridors. As night falls, an unsettling silence blankets the grounds. Visitors report ghostly figures patrolling the perimeter, silent soldiers with hollow eyes, forever bound to their posts. The air grows thick with an unnatural chill, and footsteps echo through empty halls, stopping just when you think you're alone. Some claim to hear the faint clash of bayonets, remnants of drills from a time long gone. An eerie mist often rolls in from the coast, wrapping the fort in a spectral embrace, as if the spirits within are still preparing for battle. Those who wander Fort Glenville after dark often leave shaken, convinced they've stepped into a place where history, and the haunted souls it left behind, refuses to let go. 5th, Fort Queenscliff, Queenscliff, Victoria. Fort Queenscliff stands tall on Victoria's rugged coast, its walls whispering secrets of over a century of military history. Built in the 1860s, the fort was once a line of defense against foreign invaders, yet it's now best known for its spectral inhabitants. As twilight fades, an unnatural cold settles over the grounds, and footsteps echo in empty hallways. Visitors often feel a heavy presence watching them, especially near the barracks where the ghost of a soldier, tragic and forlorn, is said to wander. He appears in flashes, clad in a worn uniform, his eyes hollow and distant, forever reliving the agony of a fatal accident. Flickering lights and sudden drops in temperature unsettle even the bravest, and whispers seem to seep from the very stones of Fort Queenscliff, as if voices from the past are desperate to be heard. Those who dare linger in the silence often leave with a chill, haunted by the feeling they've encountered a soul that will never be at rest. 6. Middlehead Fortifications, Mosman, New South Wales. Hidden among the trees of Sydney's Middlehead, the fortifications sit like a forgotten sentinel, their crumbling walls holding the echoes of a troubled past. Built in the 19th century to defend Sydney Harbour, the site is now a chilling reminder of wartime tragedy. As dusk falls, an oppressive silence blankets the area, broken only by the eerie sound of wind whistling through the empty gun pits. Visitors often feel an unseen presence following their every step, and many have reported hearing the disembodied voices of soldiers, their urgent conversations lost to time. Ghostly figures in uniform have been seen standing in the shadows, their faces unreadable as if trapped in an endless watch. The atmosphere grows heavier at night, with sudden cold drafts and inexplicable flickers of light that seem to retreat as soon as you approach. Some say the spirits of the past are still on guard, unwilling to abandon their posts, forever bound to the fort's silent, haunted grounds. 7. Fort Dennison, Sydney, New South Wales. Fort Dennison rises ominously from the center of Sydney Harbour, isolated and brooding against the skyline. Built as a prison in the early 1800s, the fort holds a dark past, having witnessed suffering and punishment on its lonely shores. As twilight deepens, the air around Fort Dennison becomes heavy, and visitors describe an eerie sense of being watched from the shadows. Some report hearing faint cries and the relentless clinking of chains as if the tormented souls of prisoners are still bound here. Ghostly figures have been seen pacing the ramparts, silhouetted against the city lights, before vanishing into thin air. Strange cold spots appear in the warmer night air, and whispers drift across the fort's stone corridors, making even the bravest feel a chill down their spine. Those who visit Fort Dennison after dark often leave unsettled, haunted by the lingering spirits trapped on this island, forever echoing their cries into the silent, watchful night. 8. Fort Drummond, Newcastle, New South Wales. Fort Drummond lies hidden within Newcastle's rugged hills, its long abandoned tunnels and stone walls cloaked in mystery and shadows. Constructed in the 1890s as a defense point, this fort is now notorious for the unsettling encounters reported by those who dare to explore it. As dusk settles, an unnatural stillness falls over the fort, interrupted only by faint echoes that seem to rise from deep within its tunnels. Visitors have felt unseen hands brush past them, and whispers drift through the air, recounting stories that only the dead remember. Some claim to see shadowy soldiers standing at attention, their spectral figures fading into darkness when approached. Cold drafts sweep suddenly through the stone corridors, chilling visitors to the bone, and the metallic clang of phantom footsteps reverberates in empty chambers. Those who venture into Fort Drummond at night often leave in silence, shaken by the feeling that they've crossed paths with spirits still bound to this fortress, standing their eternal guard in the shadows. 9. Point Nepean Quarantine Station, Portsea, Victoria. At the edge of Portsea's windswept shores, Point Nepean Quarantine Station stands as a ghostly monument to the past, where the living and the dead are separated by nothing more than a thin veil. Once a place of isolation for the sick and dying, it now holds the spirits of those who never made it out. As night falls, a heavy stillness blankets the station, broken only by the distant crash of waves and the occasional flicker of dim lights from within the crumbling buildings. Visitors often feel an overwhelming presence as they walk the desolate grounds, the air thick with the cold grip of death. The sound of footsteps, not their own, echoes through empty hallways, and whispers of mournful cries fill the silence. Some claim to see figures in old hospital gowns wandering the station, their eyes hollow, lost in endless torment. The air grows cold, heavy with sorrow, and those brave enough to stay too long often leave with a lingering sense of dread, as if the souls of the quarantined are still waiting for release, forever trapped within the station's haunted walls. 10th. Fort Cowan, Morton Island, Queensland. On the windswept shores of Morton Island, Fort Cowan stands abandoned, its crumbling walls whispering forgotten tales of war and ghostly encounters. Built during World War II as a coastal defense fort, it now serves as a chilling reminder of a turbulent past. As night descends, the air grows thick with unease, and visitors report hearing the distant echoes of artillery fire and the faint clinking of chains in the dark. Shadows move within the fort's decaying rooms, and some claim to see the figure of a soldier standing watch, his face forever locked in a grim expression, slowly fading into the night as if he's never left. Cold drafts sweep through the empty hallways, sending shivers down the spine of anyone who dares to explore. The ground beneath seems to hum with an eerie energy, as if the fort itself is alive with the souls of soldiers who perished here. Those who linger too long at Fort Cowan often leave shaken, haunted by the feeling that someone, still stands guard over this forsaken place. 11th. Garden Island Fortifications, Garden Island, Western Australia. Amidst the quiet waves of Garden Island lies a forgotten fortress, its stone walls holding the restless spirits of those long gone. The Garden Island Fortifications, built in the 19th century to protect Fremantle, now stand abandoned yet not empty. As night falls, the island becomes eerily still, broken only by the faint rustling of wind through the trees. Visitors often report the unsettling sensation of being watched, as if unseen eyes are tracking their every move. The faint clink of metal echoes through the empty bunkers, and shadows seem to shift in the corners of the fort's crumbling rooms. Some claim to see soldiers in uniform, their faces gaunt and expressionless, vanishing as quickly as they appear. Strange cold drafts creep through the tunnels, and the air grows heavy with the weight of history. Locals speak of an oppressive feeling that lingers over the fort, as if the spirits of soldiers who died in battle or under mysterious circumstances are forever bound to the island. Those who venture into its depths often leave with an unnerving feeling, like they've stepped into a place where the past refuses to rest. 12th. Kangaroo Island Fort, Kangaroo Island, South Australia. On the rugged shores of Kangaroo Island, the abandoned fort looms over the landscape, a silent sentinel to a forgotten past. Built during the 19th century to defend against potential invaders, Kangaroo Island Fort now stands in eerie solitude, its crumbling stone walls whispering tales of death and despair. As twilight falls, an unnatural stillness settles over the island, broken only by the crash of waves against the rocks below. Those who venture here often report a chill creeping up their spine, the heavy air thick with the feeling of being watched. Cold drafts seem to come from nowhere, and some claim to hear the faint sound of footsteps echoing through the fort's long-forgotten corridors. Ghostly figures dressed in old military uniforms have been seen standing guard, their faces pale and empty, forever trapped in their duty. Visitors who stay too long often feel a sense of dread, as if the restless spirits of the past refuse to leave, bound to the fort by an unspoken duty that time cannot erase. 13. Fortlton, Brisbane, Queensland. Nestled on the banks of the Brisbane River, Fortlton stands as a chilling reminder of Australia's military past. Built in the late 1800s to protect the region from potential invasion, this fortress now houses more than just remnants of history. As dusk falls, the air around the fort becomes thick with a sense of unease, and an unsettling silence pervades the grounds. The once bustling fortifications are now eerily still, but visitors have reported strange occurrences. The echo of phantom footsteps reverberates through its old tunnels, and cold drafts sweep through its empty rooms. Some claim to see figures in military garb, standing sentinel, their eyes hollow, trapped in their eternal duty. Whispers drift through the darkness, and the heavy air seems to press in on those who dare to venture close. Those who explore after nightfall often leave with an overwhelming sense of dread, as if something or someone still watches from the shadows, unable to move on from the horrors of the past. 14. Greenhill Fort, Thursday Island, Queensland. Perched high above Thursday Island, Greenhill Fort overlooks the surrounding seas, its weathered stone walls steeped in both history and mystery. Originally built in the 1890s to defend against potential threats, the fort has long since been abandoned. But as night falls, it is said to come alive with the spirits of those who once served there. The island is cloaked in an eerie silence, broken only by the distant call of the wind and the crashing waves below. Visitors often report a chill in the air, and some have felt the unmistakable sensation of being watched. The shadows seem to shift, and the faint sound of footsteps echoes through the fort's narrow passages, though no one is there. Ghostly figures dressed in old military uniforms have been seen standing guard, their faces hollow, eyes hollow with grief and longing. As the night deepens, the oppressive feeling of being trapped in the past grows stronger, as if the spirits of soldiers who died here still patrol the fort's forgotten halls, bound to the land and sea forever. 15. Bear Island Fort, Taparoo, New South Wales. On the edge of Taparoo, the Bear Island Fort stands alone, its crumbling stone walls a stark reminder of its dark past. Built in the late 1800s to guard Sydney's shores, the fort now seems to hold more than just the weight of history. As dusk falls, an unsettling stillness envelops the island. The sound of the waves crashing against the rocks below is replaced by a heavy silence, broken only by the occasional whisper of the wind. Visitors often report strange sensations, cold drafts that seem to come from nowhere, the feeling of being watched by unseen eyes, and the unmistakable sound of footsteps echoing through the fort's abandoned rooms. Some say the ghostly figures of soldiers, their uniforms worn and faded, still stand at attention, their hollow eyes staring out to sea, waiting for a war that's long past. The air grows thick with a sense of dread, and those who dare to stay too long claim the island feels alive with the restless spirits of its past, trapped in time, unable to move on. Whether it's the echoes of soldiers' footsteps or the cold presence of spirits in forgotten rooms, these haunted forts are reminders of the many untold stories trapped within their walls. Are you brave enough to visit? The restless souls of Australia's forts are waiting,